What's up, everyone? Jason at Hard Money Bankers, Ian at Equity Warehouse, coming at you live for another episode of the Real Estate Reserve podcast. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. We promise we'll keep this entertaining, and you'll probably learn something as well. If you are a repeat follower, listener, have been in our audience for a while, peace. Thank you so much for following us. We certainly appreciate it. We couldn't have done all of this without your guys' support. So awesome topic today. Really good topic. We're going to introduce you to Shane here in a second. And I think this is very relevant to a lot of folks because Shane, quit his full-time job and has become a full-time real estate investor, mostly focusing in the self-storage space. I'll let him explain that when he comes on here in a second. But I think this is very relevant to a lot of folks. There's so many people that I think Ian and I know that want to be real estate investors full time. They invest in real estate. Maybe it's residential, maybe it's commercial, and they're just not sure when the right time is to quit their job. And for some folks, it could be like, hey man, quit right now, go all in, let's do it. You're not going to fail. You won't have the ability to fail because you need this. And other folks, they want to wait until their side hustle, their side portfolio replaces their income at work before they feel comfortable in going all in. So it's really no right or wrong way, but it is good to hear different stories from different folks to see how they did it personally.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to get over that hump, even though we should have done it years ago. But we are here today, and we are jobless and now full-time real estate investors. But I literally got a chance to watch our guest. I actually sat at the table and watched him mentally go through it and say, you know what? Fuck this. This is for me. Game on. So before I go and ruin this story and botch it, let's bring in Shane Chapin all the way from Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah. What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I gotta give you best dressed, nicest hat on the podcast today. So congratulations. I love it.
Appreciate you.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring you in, and if you want, just give us a quick background. What you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Shane. Like Ian said, I am in Jacksonville, Florida. I am originally from the upstate Western New York area, but part of my vision was I was leaving there, and my wife and I really wanted to move south to Florida, and so that's where we are. Sunny Jacksonville now. We've been here for a couple of years. Grew up in upstate New York, did all the normal stuff, school, hockey. Got out of high school and went right in the Army. Spent some time in there. After the Army, there was kind of a lack of options based on the job that I did. It was pretty much either manual labor or some kind of sales, and that's what I got into. I ended up in the car business. I ended up at a car dealership. It was a great experience. Loved it. Worked at a Ford dealership. Loved the product, and I learned a lot of lessons. But it was through that time that I realized that I was kind of on a path of. I could see my future. I had my general manager sat next to me, and he was my future. He was the ghost of my Christmas future was sitting next to me every day. And the longer I was there, the more I realized that it wasn't really the path I wanted to be on, and I knew there had to be a better life out there. That's began my search, finding that better life.
So let's just I think this will be a good frame up for everybody. So you're sitting there, you don't want to do your TPS reports. You're looking at the next level. You're like, fuck this. I don't want to do this. Like, what did you start to do to even you got this feeling inside you, but where did you even turn and look to say, all right, there's got to be something better out there for me to do to ultimately achieve this goal?
Probably what most people at this point do. It was I just started searching things replace my W-2, and I don't even have the right search terms, but how do I quit my job was probably one of those things. And, how do I replace my income? Those kind of things, how to build wealth. Those are all the Google searches that eventually led me to Bigger Pockets. And that was really kind of my first introduction into any real estate investing, that kind of networking, all that was all Bigger Pockets. And at that point, I just dove full in and was every day to work, from work, listening to the podcast and just trying to learn all the stuff that I didn't know and figure out which direction to go. And the minute you look at this, obviously there's 8 million niches and assets. And so just trying to kind of figure out what was going to fit with the resources and abilities I had was tough.
Do you think it was solely financial, or do you think that freedom had a lot to do with it as well, kind of on this path of, hey, like you're probably making decent money selling cars, right? Because if you're halfway good at selling cars, someone can make a decent living doing so. Again, there's obviously a ceiling to that. And don't get me wrong, but you also got to put in the time, and
Sure.
it's nonstop over and over and over and over. So was it the money side, the freedom side, the challenge side, all of the above?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love looking at it because it really had nothing to do with money. I mean, money was there and it was in the conversation. It was in the thoughts. I made very good money there. By the time I left, I was the general sales manager. There was only one more position to go. So, I mean, I made really good money. We lived a very comfortable life. We traveled when we wanted to. We had a nice house, a pool, lived pretty well. But the calls I was getting from my little ones at home, my two daughters that were at home saying, Daddy, are you going to be able to make it home for pizza night? Daddy, are you coming to be able to tuck me into bed tonight? Never said, Daddy, how much do we have in the bank? Daddy, are all the bills paid? Daddy, how much money did you make today? How many cars did you sell today? Like it was all, when are you going to be home, Daddy? When are you going to be here, Daddy? Are you going to be able to come to watch me on Saturday? And I couldn't. So it had nothing to do with money. And it was all about the new commodity was time. In my 30s, when it was all about that almighty buck and how much money can I make selling cars. I hit that number and it wasn't buying me the happiness I think that I thought maybe it was going to buy me. And I realized I was chasing the wrong commodity. And nothing to do with money. It was all about the freedom.
So you recognize that like you want time, freedom, you want money too, right? Like we all need to live, but time, freedom, and lifestyle and those types of things become uber more important. You start researching Bigger Pockets and some other groups and you stumble on it. And we all have a common friend, business partner, previous guest on the podcast in Scott Spear, which I think at some point he kind of connects you into the asset class that you ultimately wound up getting in. But like, how'd you even have those conversations of like, was he reaching out to you? I know it had something to do with the dealership and you kind of like, were you wearing your heart on your sleeve and telling everyone like, hey man, like I want to learn about real estate, or, did someone just come to you and then you're like, oh yeah, like I've been interested in that. Let me talk to you about that. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it was, when you're learning this, one of the things you start to learn, I was hearing, is networking, right? You got to get out there. You've got to network. You got to put yourself out there. You got to let everyone know what you're trying to do, when you're trying to do it, how you're trying to do it, just get it out there. So started reaching out to some people, was introduced to a few people locally in Rochester that were doing this, found a coffee club meetup that was just every Wednesday morning at 7:30 in the morning. We met out at this Wegmans and we sat around and had coffee and just talked real estate. So I got myself into this group. And that was the biggest thing, I think, for me, was putting myself out there and just letting people know this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I want to do. And I continued to go to those meetups. And in the midst of us buying our one and only single family house that we had ever, flipped and purchased, my wife and I was complaining about it. It took us a year to do it. I was working 60 hours a week at the dealership and I was sitting here for 3-4 hours every single night until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, peeling paint, whatever. I met Scott Spear at the coffee club and we had a couple of familiar circles, but he's the one that, as I was telling him that I didn't think that single family was going to be scalable for me in my position. It wasn't going to get me to where I needed to get to in the time frame I wanted. He's the one that said, hey man, what about self-storage? I said, I'd never even rented a storage facility. So yeah, look up Mike Wagner and see what you find. And man, I never came out of that rabbit hole.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you specifically were at your car dealership doing sales, where anybody in general is at their normal job, like they're so secluded to the entrepreneur journey, to the real estate journey, the whatever self-employed journey. Like it's hard to get to that next step. Like soon as you get over there, you're hanging out with Spear, Wagner, Ian, whoever, like that's all they do over there. It's completely different. So it's just like getting out of your own side. And I think that's challenging for a lot of folks because it's kind of like, oh, well, I got, my work life here, my W-2 work life here. And then I got my business and my side real estate hustle over here. And it's like, those are two different, things. Those are two different, like completely different. The mentality of the people over here, the mentality of the people over here, the goals over here, of these people, the goals over here. So like, sometimes you got to just like leave the past behind and do so. When did you kind of quit the car dealership. At some point, we're going to talk about your first deal because that's something we ask all of our guests. Like, run through your first deal, how you found it, how'd you get funding. But like, how long did it take to quit your job and just rely on everything related to real estate investing?
I mean, I feel like it took a while from 2016 when my wife and I had that aha moment on St. Croix at the cruise to getting to that. Right, that was 2016, like July 2016. We bought our first house in December of 18. Right, so that took us a while just to kind of really find our way through it. I had a lot of limiting beliefs. Imposter syndrome was a huge thing that I started to feel when I was getting around these types of groups. Like, do I belong here?
Sure.
You know, is this where I'm supposed to be? But honestly, we bought our first deal June of 2020. Went to my first retreat end of that year. Sat with Ian. I had a 5-year plan, turned down to a 2-year plan. And honestly, it was 6 months later, I quit the job, February of 2021. So it took about 6 months. But when you guys led into the intro of this, I mean, there is a couple different ways to look at when it is time to leave. And I feel like I may have done it a little bit differently than a lot of people do. But I had my own reasons for doing that.
Well, and let's talk about that. So you kind of put the cart before the horse and said, fuck it, I'm out. Mm. You had a very unique situation where your kids were able to come down with you, and it's a big family situation. So it's good for you there. But also you were somewhat financially secure, I got to assume, going into buying your first property to have some runway, right? And then also past that, I think you put yourself against the wall and said, all right, I got to go do this. Like, there's no turning back. I ain't crawling back to the goddamn dealership. Let's talk about, and that's just me from the outside looking in, witnessing it in real time, what happened. I was blown away when we sat at that table. It was me, you, and another gentleman, Ken Holmes, who we've had on here, talking about, going through, hey, like, what does your budget look like? Do you have other resources of funds that you can tap? You could do this today and not tomorrow. And I was like, oh man, like, this guy's leading this dude down a path that I'm not comfortable doing. No offense to Shane, but I'm like, I don't know if this man has it, because you could tell you had the imposter syndrome. You could tell that you're like, I don't know, man. And I think when you embrace that, it was like you became a totally different person. So like, I guess kind of like talk to us, like, your mental state to be able to put the cart before the horse and just say, I'm ripping the Band-Aid off and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it really is about the people that you're around, right? And you surround yourself with. And I'm still blown away. When I look back at sitting at that table with you and Ken, I'm blown away at the amount of confidence you guys at least were able to show me that you had in me, and you didn't know me. And that blew me away. I mean, that meant a lot to me. And it kind of gave me a little bit of extra fire to go do that. It is a mental game. Everything's a mental game. I mean, life's a mental game. If you can't get this straight and figure this out, none of this matters. None of it matters. So getting that right, feeling that I belong, I was financially secure in a way that I had put certain things in place, and then the universe provided the rest. Like, stars really did align for us. The fact that I was able to pick up and move my children, my wife, my ex-wife, her boyfriend, all down south out of New York to get everybody south, because I wasn't going anywhere without everybody. For that to be able to work, we sold our house that we had, that we were living in, our primary residence, and we had made some good decisions along the way there. We had a lot of equity there. So I'll admit that I had that nest egg in leaving the dealership. It did give me a little bit of a runway, but for me, I made a lot of money at the dealership. I didn't really need all the money I made at the dealership, and I knew that I either had a choice of figuring out how to get storage to make this much money, or I can start by working on how much money I need to live. And I reduced my expenses. I kind of thinned a lot of things out. We got comfortable. And it was like, well, we really don't need this much. Now we only need this much, and we can live day to day. This will last us X. For me, it was wrecking me out trying to do both, trying to wear both hats. It wasn't fair to the dealership that I was doing this while I was there, and it wasn't fair to my kids that I was doing this in the evenings and weekends when I'm, the few hours that I am home. My decision to leave was just based on, I figured I was going to be able to move myself faster through this, and put my back against the wall, like you said, if I just could solely focus on this next chapter of my life. And of course, I told myself I could always go to a dealership if I had to, sales or sales. But for me, I just wanted to go and leave before I had the money. I'd still be there if I was trying to technically replace that income on cash flow. So.
Well, I mean, you witnessed me. Like, that's why I didn't leave for a long time. I was like, oh, well, this is comfortable. This is comfortable. This is comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to build this thing. This is comfortable, And then finally it was like, man, we got to go. And I mean, I think you quit your job before I quit my job. And obviously I've had, not to boast, but tenfold the real estate you did. And I was like, fuck, Shane's quitting. I need to catch up to this fool. But I think, making, and it's one thing we don't talk about is like, making the right financial decisions going into life in general. It's like, when you're 20, you're living the high life. When you're 30, you're like, oh man, I shouldn't live the high life, but now I got to provide for my family. It's like that cash gets burned up quick. And if you can make some of these decisions early on and file a budget and be strict and put some capital away, it adds up. I know Jason talks about a lot about just stacking his lender account, right? Like it adds up over time. And then you know what? You have other opportunities later in life when you have that cash available to you, which, good for you, man. It was awesome. So.
And here's the other thing. Like, I feel trying to think how to state this, but maybe I don't want to say 20s, 30s, 40s, just, in your 20s and your 30s, 40s, because that's not a fair way to say it. But I think earlier on, it's like, cool, this is how much money I want. And, you think about a certain dollar figure and it's so much money, right? Like I remember I just need to get to make $100,000 a year. And I was like, I'll be rich as hell on that. Right. But like, first it's like doing whatever. I don't care what it is. I want active income to get to, $100,000. And even if I spend all that every month, I don't care. Like that's all I need is that. And then eventually, you get the next maturity in life is you get to a place where, you want to start saving money and building assets and buying assets and things like that. So it's like, okay, well, I want to make this much money so I can own this much real estate or these many businesses or this many assets. And then my business income is replacing my W-2 income, right? Like that's like step 2, right? So it's like, cool, I have a business that's paying me, $100,000 a month, $100,000 a year. And then I think step 3, which I think a lot of us are trying to strive for, is passive income, where it's like, I don't have to do anything and that money's still coming in, either investing in notes, investing in self-storage facilities that run themselves, investing in rental properties that run themselves, renting in businesses that you're completely passive on. So I think that has to go in just with the maturity factor. Like things change, different things might be, more important or less important than they were when we were different phases and stages of our lives.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
I think to me personally, like if I had all this information, but I was my actual 20-year-old self, I would not be able to do what I've done with the information I have. So the knowledge is not alone going to get you there. Like I was not that guy in my 20s. I had no business being that guy, and I would have never been able to be that guy. So
we talk about it. If you would have had that money, right? Like if you would have had that cash, we all know the bad decisions we would have made in our 20s. We joke about it, but it's true. Like there is a level of maturity you need to be able to take these steps forward. With that, like so you do one house, you realize it's not for you. What does your first self-storage deal look like, with the assistance of, we all know Mr. Scott Spear, who likes to assist everyone getting into deals, but what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, again, put myself out there, told everybody what I was doing, joined the Storage Rebellion, was going to these calls. I was trying to put myself out there at least, right? I was trying to just answer some questions or, talk during the calls when they'd ask for someone to raise their hand and talk about something. I'd do it. And so people became familiar with me, even though they didn't know me, but in the community, people started to know of me. And that helped me when I was looking for that first deal I was thought of. And so they brought it up in a call. Scott reached out to me. Chris Michaels had found the deal in Facebook. And had under contract. He needed to wholesale a deal. He wasn't looking to own and operate. And we were looking for our first one. And this was in South Carolina. They presented it to me and seemed like a good opportunity. Small. It was exactly what we were trained to look for.
Okay. So you put that deal together, and what does the partnership look like? I guess it's a small deal in South Carolina. Can you define small for the audience so we can kind of put context to it? And How did you put the cash together for this deal, or what was your role in this deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted the deal. So the deal was brought to me. I did not have whatever cash I may have had at the time was not cash that I was mentally prepared to just part with. I wasn't there. So I didn't want to put money out. So through Scott, I was introduced to an investor that knew of the deal, and a couple of calls, and they were able to offer the entire purchase price to me. They asked for 60% of the equity for that. I did not argue. I took 30% and gave another 10% for a little additional capital that we needed for some work to be done on the facility. And that's how it got structured. We were, 3 people in this, 60, 30, 10, and no debt, all cash. And then it's just, cash flow and equities to split between the partners.
Ian, like, it's really funny that a lot of real estate investors, they structure their first deals or their earlier deals with seller financing, creative debt by giving up equity to private investors and things like that. And I think when you do commercial units and things like that, it maybe it's just more standard or prevalent in that space. Because like these residential investors that always freaking piss me off, or they try to buy a rental property and they're like, you can't do it with no money down. And it's like, yeah, you can if you structure it the right way. They just don't they don't get it. It's I don't know. It's weird. And I don't know, maybe it's a commercial versus residential thing, or maybe it's like the difference between a successful person and not a successful person. Like
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head before. I don't mean to cut you off, but like barrier to entry into residential real estate, like you could have the worst credit in the world to get into residential real estate, right? You just need some cash and it's not a lot of money. I think in commercial real estate, I believe personally that there's a lot more B2B, a lot more people willing to get deals done. There's a lot more creative room. Shane, what was the purchase price on this small deal that you had that was, 20,000 square feet? No, 15,000 square feet?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the square feet for King Street was just under 11,000 square feet.
So 11,000 square feet, you guys spend what, 400 grand, 300 grand, somewhere in there? Maybe less.
210 was the purchase price and another 20 for rehab.
Okay, so let's think about that. You're talking about 11,000 square foot facility, 210. They're into this thing all for 275, and it's probably worth 500 on the back end. Yo, dude, like I'll take 30% of that $300,000 payday. You would too, Jay. But in the same sense, if I'm talking about $100,000 house, we're having a 30 grand payday, and for me to get 30%, $9,000, like whether it's today or day one, I might have considered it, but like day 2 or 3, I would have said, oh, it's not worth my time for that $9,000. I can just go out and buy 2 more rental houses and I'm done. And I think that's where the creativeness inside of commercial real estate is much more prevalent than it is in the residential world.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's true. I mean, the barrier to entry into residential real estate is not much. And it seems that people are just more creative on deals like that. And you're right, there could be bigger ticket things, but it's also, you can't take for granted the learning experiences you get when owning real estate. I mean, you could be at, you get a college degree in this crap, or you can go to school and learn all this stuff. But like, it's not real. It's just the knowledge of it, right? Like we talk about the learning versus execution phase, education versus execution phase, right? Like the guys that are super, super educated but never do a deal, like, I hate to say it, but like professors or things like that, and they're actually just teaching, not doing. Like that's not good for anybody. But at the other side, like you can't just be an executor and not know what the hell you're doing either, because then you're just out there scamming people and screwing people and not closing because you don't know what the hell you're doing. And I've seen both sides of it. So I don't know. I just feel like in general, it's sometimes, and we've had a few guests on our show that they've never bought a residential property in their life. The first deal they ever did, they made $1 million on a multifamily property. And they just like, instinctively were like, I don't want to mess with residential. I just want to buy commercial stuff. So I think it's just different lessons of structuring stuff. And I think like Shane's got the mindset, which is the right mindset of, hey, like I'll do a deal. If I don't have to put up any of my own money, I'll do some sweat equity and I'll get like a big piece of the pie. Like, why not?
Yeah.
And I feel like some folks don't think like that.
And actually, let's talk about that. So, like, Shane, you kind of carved yourself out a niche. You do this first deal, you get 30%. You know, like the first event I think I was ever at, everyone's like, yo, Shane's an operator. I was like, who the fuck is this Shane guy? Meanwhile, I'm sitting at a table with him and he can't figure out if he wants to quit his job or not. I was like, what do you mean he's an operator, right? But that's what we have in common, Shane, because I didn't quit my job either, so it doesn't matter. But either way, so we're sitting there and, you know, you kind of carved this niche of becoming an operator, and you and Scott Spear have kind of built this thing now, whether you're formal partners or not, of you kind of coming in being that operator type and not having to come out of cash out of pocket. How has that like worked into your new deals as you've gone forward? How, like, are you doing deals on your own? You only looking to come in as an operator with other people, or like what's your overall goal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was using the tools that we had, right? So we didn't have a bunch of extra capital, so that wasn't going to be part of it. And at that point, I wasn't really sure how I was going to find deals. I mean, I knew what I was taught, but I knew processes. That was one thing, like the dealership I learned was how to put processes in place, how to not only build the systems, but then manage those systems and making sure that the systems are functioning as they were built to function. And then identifying when they're not and fixing that issue somewhere along the chain. All of those things translated to investing. I mean, self-storage or not, it's a business. There's processes, there's systems, there's people. It's not that different. So my wife and I worked together at the dealership for about 6 years. So we're very good at working together. And this is, the niche that we carved out was we're pretty good at operating these things. And the more that we've done, the easier it gets, the faster they turn around. But apparently it was a needed, because there's people out there that have money that maybe can find deals, but they don't want to operate them day to day. They don't want to deal with that stuff. So there's those people out there, and then there's people with the money out there that just don't want to deal with anything, and they just want some returns. So we filled that void of, we can do the dirty work. We'll go in, we'll travel the country, we'll go to these sites, we'll turn these around, we'll do all the dirty work, deal with the contractors, build websites, get call centers. We've been basically building a business in a box, and then we turn around and look to sell that business to somebody that doesn't want to do the dirty work, still wants the meat on the bone, but wants something fairly turnkey.
Yeah, and I think that's smart that you recognize is like, all right, cash isn't my strong suit, right? And maybe not even though you were in sales, the sales side of this wasn't really your strong suit per se either, but what your strong suit was the people and process and stepping in and saying, I can handle this for people. And yeah, it is, because everyone's like, oh, storage is so passive. Storage is not passive. It is a little bit of a war. You got a lot of work to do, and it can get ugly, and it could be good, and it could be easy, but it also can be a war. So I think that was smart in carving yourself out a niche, because then people are coming to you in these meetings, right? And they're all of a sudden they're like, hey, Shane, I got this deal. Like, what do you think? Like, you want to operate it for me? And then you get to creep up your price. And, that's ultimately how we got connected on a deal. Someone brought us a deal and was like, yo, I really want to do this deal. I was like, man, I don't have time to do this deal. Like, I just don't. Like, no offense, I love you, but like, it's too small. I have no fucking desire to do this deal. I said, but I know my man Shane needs to make some money. Let's just make him the operator. And I gave up equity in exchange for you to operate the deal. It's a no-brainer, right? I want to be a part of this crew, but in the same sense, I don't have time to operate a 15,000 square foot facility that's not near anything else that we own. So, but let's talk about, so you did a lot of partnerships. Let's talk about you've done a couple deals on your own. Let's do a little case study on your Macon, Georgia deal.
Okay.
You actually sponsored that one. You did it on your own. What did that whole sales process look like, kind of start to finish? Give us a little case study on that property.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting, because that was most of the deals we have. All the deals we have are kind of just brought, right? They come to me. I don't do marketing. I'm not calling. I'm not sending out mailers. We have wholesalers throughout the country that will make us their first call when they have something under contract. And if it's something that we take. If not, we remarket it out for them. Macon, Georgia was a listed facility that, things come full circle. So the other individual at our table, Ian, at that first retreat, was Ken Holmes. And he knew the broker. It was not a deal for him at the time. And he knew I was looking for our next deal, and I wanted 20,000+ square feet. So this was 23,000 square feet, about 186 units in Macon, Georgia, that was listed. We purchased it for 560 grand, raised another 40. We were all in at 600. I will say that on this deal, the reason I was told I got the deal and my offer was accepted, even though it was a little bit of a lower price than others, was I made a mistake when I submitted my offer. And I only gave myself about 50 days from the time my offer went in to the time I told them I was going to close. And I didn't know that was not a good thing. Until I started talking about banks, and they're like, well, you're never going to get a bank to do a loan that short of a time. I was like, okay, so I guess I can't get banks. So I turned around and then all of a sudden had a very instant need to raise $600,000 in cash. And I didn't have a lot of time to do it. So that was my first real big raise. We were able to raise all of it. I think it took a few weeks. And we were fortunate enough to have a retreat as well right at that time. So I was able to kind of finish off the raise in person with people. Everything went. It was.
You were walking around. I can't. I was like, change to everybody. And by the end, like the end of the day, I was thinking there'd be like $5,000 left for me to put my IRA into it. You're like, I filled it up. I was like, fuck, I got this $5,000, Shane. Come on, man.
Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. I was blown away. So
it was impressive.
Yeah. So all in for 600. And a lot of people talk about cap rates, and I think especially when like newer investors, we get like so hung up on what cap rate you buy, what cap rate. Well, I had no idea, but I know this thing was about a 5 cap when I bought it. We sold it closer to a 7. It's just the way that the market worked, but the income and expense ratio is about 57% on this facility. When we were looking at it, that was the biggest number that jumped out at me out of everything. Was I knew that without doing anything else, I could get that down closer to 30, right? I knew that there were certain line items that I was going to replace that they were paying for that I didn't need to pay for. The deal made sense. So we took it down. We bought it. I'm going to go through like kind of the actual.
Yeah, just give us a quick like idea. So
at the end of it,
$100,000 in 2020. Was it 2021?
November 2021.
In November 2021, you buy this property. How long do you hold it? Like, what kind of capital improvements you make in this thing to get these expenses down? Like, we're talking to other viewers that like want to get involved in self-storage. What does this look like?
Yeah, so the owner of this, the previous owner of this, is a bigger player in the self-storage space, and so they had third-party management on this. That was really a lot of their expense was third-party management. They weren't cleaning out units or having auctions, so there was a lot of just dead space, a lot of delinquent space. I think some electricity issues they had just running. And so really the big thing was like the management section of it. I was able to just take them out and put myself and my wife in, and we did not pay ourselves that insane amount of money that they were drawing from the previous owner. So that's how we turned that around. A couple other improvements. We went through security was a big issue here. They had a camera system, like a couple of cameras, and then there was a TV in an office, and then another camera looking at the TV, and then that camera was connected to a phone. So they'd look at their phone that would look at a camera looking at a TV. It was really odd. We completely revamped the entire security system, put like 16 brand new like high definition cameras throughout with a company, increased lighting, put door lighting, just trimmed some trees, just did some cleanups, a little bit of, fixed some doors that were kicked in, things like that. And, that was really it. It was already on ESS. So we just brought in a call center, and we ended up holding it for 16 months, and we sold it for 1.2.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. So 1.2. So your investors, they put in 600 and ultimately they got back 900, right? So, yep. I mean, that's a good deal in 16 months. I mean, that's absolutely awesome. And then who wound up buying that? Like, so obviously, I mean, like some people think that like we come in here, stabilize these things. There's no meat left on the bone. Who's going to buy that? But like, do you know who bought it and like kind of what they were going to do with it?
Yeah, it was a smaller company, but I think we were about their 12th facility. We'll go with that. So there was, we were their 12th facility. They had pretty good operations set up. They seemed like they had a good team and a good investor backing. So they were well-rounded as far as buyers. There was a lot of value still to be added to this facility. You still had some rent raises to go. Our occupancy was really in the low 80s. We didn't really cross that. We didn't get up there. So, I mean, I think there was still some meat on the bone for them. I know that their underwriting, it fit in their underwriting, but it did take a larger down payment for them to take this through a bank. While we were in contract, there was 2 rate hikes that went effective while we're under contract. It sort of, sent us a little sideways a couple of times, but all in all, it was there's still meat on the bones. I mean, that's where we get it to, a certain point, and it's just something that we're just not holding for the next 5-10 years.
Makes sense. Yeah, like what's your kind of long-term vision on, I guess, since you're focused on self-storage, kind of the self-storage market of like where that's going, and also you personally of your goals? Like, are you going to continue to try to buy stuff and whatever, turn them around and then resell for a profit? Are you have a certain amount of units or square footage that you have a goal for in a certain amount of time to replace or to increase cash flow? Like, what's kind of the outlook for you?
I used to. I guess when I first started out, all the buzzwords and all the things you got to hit. I need a certain amount of square footage. I need a certain amount of doors. If somebody asked me 2 years ago what I was going to plan for 2 years from then, I wouldn't have had this answer. I wouldn't have been able to say this is. So I don't. Plan is really day by day, and we're really in the moment. I'm not and this probably goes against what a lot of people do. So, I mean, I know there's just big goals, and I'm going to get to 1,000 doors, and I'm going to get to 1 million square feet. I just want to keep figuring out what I need to do to continue to live the life that my family gets to live right now. And as long as I can do that, I'll keep doing whatever it is that's providing that life, that's not taking me away from my family. I mean, I like storage and it makes sense. But 3 years ago, I didn't know what storage investing was. So I would have never been able to say that that's what I was going to do. I put some couple things in the universe. I'd love to have a vacation home on the island of St. Croix. That's been a goal of my wife and I, and that continues to get closer and closer to a reality. If self-storage opportunities continue to present themselves to us, then we'll continue to do what we do. I don't want to continue to be the operator. I will say that. I mean, that's not something that I'm going to do for the next 20 years. I want to build this up. I want to build systems. I want to put everything into documentation and then be able to then train off of it and help newer investors, shorten their learning curve based on the experiences I've had. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, we'll flip them for now and go where the opportunities are.
Yeah, I mean that's typically the natural transition, right? You're doing the heavy lifting as the operator. I mean that's typically what everyone does, and then it's like, hey man, this is good, but I need more leverage. I need to leverage other people. I need to leverage my time, put my capital to work, things like.
Well, and that's the biggest thing. I'm in a different place now because now
exactly
now we have some money, so it's like now I'm starting to shift where I can actually get my money working for me, and I don't need to necessarily be the one sweeping out that unit to turn it around.
That's right. What do you think as the, and nobody knows the answer to this, but where do you think the industry, the self-storage industry as a whole has gone? I mean, I know it increased a lot, since I think all you guys have been in it, which has been great. You got in at good times. If you got in earlier, it would have been even better, but you still both got in at good times. And I got in at a good time, that we've had a lot of, appreciation. Where do you think, what happens in the next 5 years, 10 years? I mean, do you any idea, any thoughts?
I mean, I think that it's been a good run. I think this has been a great run. I think a lot of us are looking a little bit smarter than maybe we actually are on some of these deals that are just mind blowing. I mean, as fun as it is to look back on my underwriting and see that I was half of what the current values are, that's like fun to look at, but also scary of what I might have been missing if my underwriting was that far off. Like, I don't want to be wrong that much either way. I think things calm down a little bit. I think there's a lot of people in the space, but a lot of people in the space and a lot of people willing to actually do something in the space are two different groups. So, you've got thousands of people out there raising their hand for every deal that comes across Facebook, and you've got 2 of them that are actually like putting in offers and buying things. So I think it settles down a little bit. I've already seen it, at least at our facilities. Occupancy is kind of just hovering a little bit where it's not necessarily climbing like it was. little more cautious on some of the rent raises and the street rates that we're hitting. We're seeing some more promotions, I think, in the markets we're in. But
I would tend to agree with.
Right?
I was just telling Jason this morning, because there's some other people out there touting, there's a major crash. We've seen it coming. Well, every day when I go and update my pricing on our dynamic pricing module, I see the price retractions every single fucking day. Like, so it's obvious. I mean, it is happening, but all you can do is navigate it. And if you continue to navigate it and make good buys along the way, not try to catch a falling sword, but make smart buys along the way, you will have that St. Croix house one day sooner than later, right? It's going to happen. So, if we had a crystal ball, we'd have everyone at your private island doing this podcast. But, I think you're doing it right. I think that's a spot on. And I'm seeing similar things. And I know Jason's seeing similar things in the residential world of price retractions and deals getting a little more scarce, but people are still doing deals, which is a good thing. So, dude, this has been awesome. There's one question that we love to ask all of our guests. And I know you're a good mental mindset guy. I love how you live life. You're a free spirit, believe in the universe. I respect all that universe stuff right here. I'm down with it all. But what's like one good book or podcast that you think everybody should read or listen to besides the Real Estate Reserve podcast? Shameless plug.
Or your book.
Or our book. Yeah, another shameless plug. There you go. I get two bangers. And Jason's got 2 books and 2 podcasts. So.
Right. Okay. So other than outside
of
current company, right? Outside of current company. Lately, I would say, well, here's my book. So this guy, Michael Singer, this is called Living Untethered. He's got 3 books: The Surrender Experiment, Untethered Soul, and Living Untethered. Listen, I know it might get off in the deep end for some people, and this isn't like, how do I build a real estate portfolio and get my cash on cash return to a certain amount? Yeah, cool. But it's mindset stuff. And to me, I would not be where I am today, have what I've had, accomplish what I've accomplished, and I'm just barely getting started. But if I didn't fix this up here, if I didn't fix, I shouldn't be saying that I was broken. So I just had some adjustments to make, some tweaks to my thought processes. I think that kind of stuff is huge for people to read. I mean, you can get the nuts and bolts, but to me, it's a lot bigger than that. And if you have bigger reasons, it's easier to walk out of that job of 14 years and bet on yourself, because you've got all the why in the world to risk it. Every reason in the world to succeed.
Yeah, no, I'm still reading The Body Keeps the Score. Another mindset book. I mean, I think you need to mix in mindset books, business books, just enjoyable books in general, to mix it up and keep that brain working. But yeah, man, I'm gonna have to put that one on the list of things to read here shortly. So
no doubt. No, Shane, this has been great. We certainly appreciate it. Where can everybody find you? You got, I mean, I know you're, I follow you. What do I follow you on? Instagram?
I don't know.
Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, I'm around. I'm pretty easy to find. I mean, it's Shane W. Chapin is the handle wherever I am. That's the handle I was able to get. So that's where you'll find me. I'm, on all of them, whatever. I'm not that good on LinkedIn. But Facebook, Instagram, Threads. I'm not on Twitter/X. But yeah, people can find me. I have nothing to sell. I don't have a website. I don't sell courses. I'm building some stuff, but nothing to sell. But I am happy to help. I mean, I don't know. It's an amazing experience to be able to inspire another human being to do something beyond what they thought they could do possible. So to me, that's great. So this opportunity to talk to the audience, I know you guys have, is awesome, man. This opportunity is very cool, and I hope somebody gets something out of it.
Hell yeah, man. Someone will definitely get something out of it. And the next one, we'll have to do a live version from a cruise somewhere. I think that's what Jason was getting at. He always enjoys watching you out on them cruises and enjoying your life, man. So we appreciate you, and we'll catch everyone on the next one.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.